Hey there YouTube and welcome to Willovision. Today I wanted to talk about the PlayStation 5's reported price and recent speculation that the console will be produced in limited numbers for its launch. In a Bloomberg article published on April 15th by Takashi Mochizuki and Yuki Furukawa, a number of interesting things were reported regarding Sony's upcoming console. So the two big takeaways from this video are going to be as follows. The first takeaway is that the PlayStation 5 may be produced in limited numbers due to the supply chain issues I previously discussed in my last video, the link is in the description below. And two, Sony is struggling to decide the price of the PS5 based on the increased production costs. The console will be priced somewhere between $450 and $500 at launch. So one of the biggest problems with the pandemic is that it tends to shut down the flow of commerce. During the Black Plague in Europe, for example, some European port cities required sailors who had been to places known to be suffering from the plague to be isolated from those around them, similar to the social distancing measures we in the United States are implementing today. Additionally, large parts of the Chinese manufacturing sector were shut down for several weeks, and on a global stage, the parts and materials that the Chinese need to actually produce the various electronic components for the next generation of consoles have become both more scarce and more expensive. Now what's interesting here is that these sorts of supply chain issues are already playing out for Nintendo. Nintendo has had trouble keeping up the supply of Switch consoles in the Japanese market due to the manufacturing issues in China. Again, go see the previous video. But Bloomberg is now reporting that Sony's PS5 is facing very similar problems, and this could have an effect both on the availability of the PS5 at launch and its day one price tag. So first off, I wanted to start out with some good news here, and that is that Sony still appears to be committed to actually launching their console in the fall, despite the possibility that I had previously suggested that the consoles could be delayed. But keep in mind that they still could be delayed depending on the current and obvious public safety issues. The bad news is that the supply chain issues previously mentioned will likely mean that the number of PS5s available at launch could be significantly lower than the number of PS4s which were sold at launch in 2013. The Bloomberg article I'm referencing provides, the company has told assembly partners it would make 5 to 6 million units of the PS5 in the fiscal year ending March 2021. According to other people involved in the machine's supply chain. When Sony released the PS4 in November 2013, it sold 7.5 million units in its first 2 quarters. So this is a significant drop-off in production from the PS4's launch in 2013. While I don't think that the fact that Sony is producing fewer consoles in and of itself will make it an absolute certainty that the consoles will all be sold out in stores, I do think that given some of the research I put together, you can be reasonably certain that there will be a shortage of them at launch. I should mention here that much of the Bloomberg article is speculation, but the authors did have contact with industry insiders, including people working closely on the PS5. The article reports that Sony's plan for the upcoming console launch is to continue building up their PS4 brand and keeping people within Sony's ecosystem, so that a consumer who owns a PS4 will be more likely to make the jump down the line onto the PS5. The article goes on to say that part of the reason Sony might be doing this is because, with the parts to produce the PS5 becoming more expensive, the console's launch price might be higher than what the average consumer might be interested in spending. Due to the costly production of the console and the simple fact that Sony is using better technology in the PS5 compared to what the PS4 was using at the time of its release, this generation of consoles is objectively much beefier than the last one, and I think that this will justify a slightly higher price tag. But unless the price is above $500, which I strongly doubt that it will be, I think that the argument that the higher price of the PS5 will equate to less demand at launch probably won't prove to be entirely accurate. A recent article published by a popular European gaming news website known as Chip asked its readers how much money they were willing to spend on the next generation of consoles, and the results were a little surprising. The data showed that the most popular answer was that most of the respondents were willing to spend up to $600. Now, is the average consumer gonna shell out $600 for a gaming console? Probably not. I think we all remember the disastrous launch of the PlayStation 3, which was priced at up to $600 when it launched back in 2006, and that definitely cost the PlayStation a lot in terms of their market share. And it should be pointed out that the respondents to that survey are presumably among the more hardcore video game enthusiasts who are typically willing to spend a little more than the average Joe plain Jane consumer. But the data shown in this chart is still telling, because it shows that consumers are willing to spend more than the traditional $400 price tag that we typically consider the ideal price point for a gaming console. And while this data is again skewed by the fact that people reading this sort of online publication are probably going to be a little bit more interested in games than the average consumer, the core market for new consoles includes the sort of hardcore video game enthusiasts who want to pursue the latest and greatest technology the very moment that it's available. Other than price, the one thing that I think could impact the number of consoles Sony is preparing is the economic downturn due to our current pandemic, but I think that this is pretty unlikely. So unemployment figures in the US have absolutely exploded due to the current crisis, and this is certain to have a major effect on the global economy and the demand for the next generation of consoles. Let's face it, most of us need to pay the rent before we play the PlayStation, and as such, many consumers are probably not going to be looking to buy a new console until they found a job or their overall employment outlook looks a lot more secure. But that being said, the video game industry has historically managed to weather economic crises very well. In fact, even in 2008, video game console sales still remained very strong despite the severe economic downturn. Given that console sales aren't historically as impacted by a downturn in the economy, I think that it's safe to say that the current economic downturn won't be a detriment to the PS5's level of demand among consumers. Furthermore, there is data to back up the idea that a slightly more expensive console won't doom console sales either, depending on what we see from Microsoft. So the Bloomberg article quoted a price figure for the PlayStation 5 that is still a bit broad. Again, that price figure is somewhere between $450 and $550. Obviously, the more expensive a console is at launch compared to its rival, the less likely it is to outsell its competitor. The Xbox 360 destroyed the PlayStation 3 in terms of sales during its first few years of production, and the PS4 has done the same to the Xbox One during this generation. According to Bloomberg, the PlayStation 5's production costs round out to roughly $450. By comparison, the PlayStation 4's production cost at launch was $381, with a launch price tag of $400. Taking a purely proportional approach would dictate that the PS4 should sell for roughly $475, but Sony has been struggling to set an exact price figure for the PS5 again, largely because of their aforementioned supply chain issues. If something's more expensive to make, the price point it needs to be sold at has to be higher in order to pass on the cost of production to the consumer, so that the company can make a profit to reinvest in their business. But again, if the price is too high, the buyers won't buy. Or worse, they'll buy your competitor's product instead. Beyond the initial money raised through selling consoles, Microsoft and Sony have a strong interest in building up as much of an install base as they possibly can for selling their PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live services as well. This incentivizes both companies to push the price of their console as low as possible and also reduces the issues that may arise from a lower console price. Because the more online service subscriptions fees you can collect, you make more money. So Sony has to make the classic decision when it comes to console launches on the price evaluation: bigger profits or a larger market share. Most sources I've seen are speculating that the Xbox Series X is most likely going to launch at a $500 price tag, and honestly, I see Sony making the same move. The console specifications are roughly identical, with both consoles featuring excellent tech specifications, and as I expect Sony to have a strong group of first-party games on hand for their launch, I can't imagine them setting a lower price for the PS5 than the Xbox Series X. And I highly doubt that either console will sell for less than $500 at launch, given their strong technical specifications and the supply chain issues that I think we can probably assume both consoles are facing. So I highly doubt that either console will sell for less than $500 at launch, given their stronger technical specifications in comparison to the current generation of consoles. To sum it all up, if you plan to game on the PlayStation, it might be a smart move to go ahead and pre-order the PS5 when the option becomes available, because it seems like it could be very difficult to find a PS5 this holiday season. Alrighty, so you've made it to the end of the video. I'm always working on new content, so please feel free to like and subscribe because it's a really big help. As always, thanks for tuning in.